So I'm with Pat Matthewson here, who's obviously standing for Student Association President. Do you just want to go through the main points of the experience that you think would help you?
Sure. In terms of experience, I think the greatest strength I bring to the role is a lack of a learning curve. That's probably what inhibits most presidents from being successful, or at least the general feeling amongst the student body that presidents do nothing. In serving as rector's assessor over the last year, I sit on the university court, which is the supreme governing body of the university. It's not a punishment or a judicial area for students who misbehave. We oversee all of the university's assets, including 180 million pounds of turnover in a year, all the buildings, all the plannings, and all the long-term strategic decisions. I think that's invaluable. In addition to that, it also comes with thoroughly built-in relationships with the likes of Louise Richardson, with the likes of major academic staff. I also sit on the SRC, and I also sit on the School President's Forum. So everything from the base level of day-to-day academics with students, to student representation on the SRC, to general university governance, I think that's quite strong. In addition, I run what I think is currently the largest, or one of the largest, student volunteering bases in the Fellowship of St. Andrews. I founded that 2 years ago, built from the ground up. I think in terms of students wanting to pursue their own endeavors like that, I think I have a great deal of insight to offer or help along the way. I've also was the director of the 600th finale ball most recently, and I think I offer something in that respect. I think that's an important part of student life, and certainly an important part of St. Andrews comes through. I'm also a founding member of the St. Andrews Typhoon, so I have the sports link, and I think that's something none of the other candidates have.
So moving on to your manifesto, obviously one of the things that's going to affect all of the SABs is the redevelopment.
Of course.
What are your plans for dealing with that?
I think this is actually, regardless of what anyone says this week, you can talk about accommodation because it's a perennial crisis. You can talk about whatever you like, but redev, regardless, is going to hurt the majority of societies if not handled correctly. I would like to lobby the university for a one-off increase in the association's block grant. We currently have the smallest in Scotland anyway, but a one-off increase. I spoke with Louise Richardson yesterday. She said she thought this was feasible. And this would allow us to purchase space throughout the town that could be put to student ends. People will say, how about we ask the university for the spaces? The problem is a lot of university spaces don't suit student needs. So the kind of rooms that we have in the union, the big salad bowl, things for dance and moving activities or theatrical practices or all sorts of fit for purpose rooms, the university simply doesn't have spaces that they can give to us and can't afford to open them up in the middle of the night like we can. So I think an increase in block grant would help.
What would you spend that money on then? Because you have the money, but what would you actually do with it?
I think what you'd want to do is, Victory Hall across the street, I think you'd want to rent that out. That's a rental space. Madras Clubhouse tends to be a rental space. Those ones you'd have to pay for. Other ones, I think we have scope for reciprocal privilege within the town. So the town hall, I think we could pursue options of student groups using it. I think they'd be happy that we say down the road, once we have our new union, we'll pay you back in terms of allowing local groups who use the town hall to meet in the union occasionally. And I think my experience working with Town Gown, those established relationships, put me in a prime place to accomplish that.
So then the next point on your manifesto is all about accommodation.
Yes.
The one that really struck me was this naming and shaming of landlords.
Certainly.
What would constitute being shamed, and who would decide on that?
I think you'd need a metric. You can't make this an anecdotal, I had a bad experience. It's not fair. That's not fair on the landlords. It's not a practical way about going about it. I think you need a full way of going for feedback, a thoroughly introduced process. Whatever we decide that metric would be, if it's a questionnaire, if it's something wherever landlords rank at a certain percentile, whenever they're particularly low or outstandingly terrible examples, consistent over a long period of time. If you have a landlord that a fourth year, a third year, and a second year all said they had a miserable experience for the same reasons, that's a red flag to me. And what we do, I think we tell the landlords this is coming ahead of time. There's a time in January every single year when they release their lists, and we tell them this is coming ahead, and we're going to send a mass email out from the Students' Union to all of our students saying, here's our list. These ones that haven't performed, make them your bottom priority in terms of who you're going to rent from.
And so another part of that is the shuttle service.
Yes.
How is that going to be funded? Is there the money there?
This is far more exploratory, and that's why I wrote that in my manifesto. I'd like to explore this option because with Redev, the union is anticipating quite a large influx of new cash. I don't know how this is going to play out. I'm not a wizard. I can't predict what union intake is going to be. First and foremost, you have priorities in terms of there used to be something called the Chunder bus, which used to ferry students who had maybe had a little bit too much to drink back from a night out to distant halls like DRA. I think that would kind of be the first port of call, especially for a safety issue, particularly for the women of this university walking home at night. They face risks that often men don't, not to say that they aren't vulnerable in that same way. That's your first priority. If you have the money, if it turns out the union's right and they've rolled the dice and they've nailed it and they have this huge cash influx, then you expand. You look into DRA, you look into Albany maybe, but this is certainly exploratory. You can't promise this, and I don't think anyone knows what the union's financial situation in the next year is going to be for sure.
And then the next one of your big policies is this alumni network.
Yes.
How's that going to work, and why is it important to you to have that?
I think selfishly, I think of my time at St. Andrews, and I'd quite like an opportunity to come back and share in the things that were special to me. I mean, for you, it'd be the same. For handfuls of other students, whether it was rugby or whether Dave Patterson, he's a mermaid. I think right now we outsource our alumni activities to two major groups, the American Foundation and the London Alumni Club. And those activities that do happen here in St. Andrews occupy the development office and never really interact with students. I think day one, if you want step-by-step how I'd go through it, I'd say day one we introduce a new position on the SRC, an Alumni Relations Officer. We put a team under them, make them responsible for putting together an annual class reunion, soliciting interest. Again, speaking with Louise yesterday, she said her office and development would be wonderfully excited to get this going. Annual reunion systems, just like we have in the States where I grew up. It's perfect. My parents, all the older folks I know, always talk about being able to go back to their university and seeing their old friends, and they do it on about a 5-year cycle. And it's union-centric because it's not your degree that you're going to remember. Yes, it's important, but it's what you did outside of that. So the rugby club puts on events for old rugby alumni. Mermaids puts on events for old mermaid alumni, and so on and so forth. So
obviously your predecessor is Chloe, who's a good friend of yours.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on her presidency? What would you do differently?
I think Chloe's probably greatest strength and greatest weakness is that she aimed quite high. The union-run letting agency was ambitious, and I think she perhaps underestimated how long activities like that would take. In the same time, I think there are other options like her Scottish Sabbatical Forum that I think should have been higher on the priority list. I think that's really important. If you look at the most recent immigration bill, when you had Glasgow, Aberdeen students all running these campaigns against this immigration bill, against how it would harm their international students, we would have been much stronger if we had a national voice to coordinate these activities. So those are probably my biggest criticisms. I think all in all, she's been a good steward of the union for right now. I would think she could have accomplished more, but she still has 4 months to go.
So on the letting agency, I had Dave in this morning. And
yes.
He said that it wasn't a high priority, but if it would work, then he'd continue it.
Yeah.
It's obviously going to be a job for the next president to put the finishing touch. Would you finish it off? Or?
If it's in good stead. I don't know exactly where it is. I don't know if Chloe has put rubber to the road outside meetings with admin. She's certainly passionate about it, and she seems to think she'll be in good stead to carry it on. I've mentioned in my manifesto, I want to do a build-based accommodation agenda. I want to, all these private developers that would like to build, I think we should certainly pursue those options because it's the only long-term fix. It's an economic problem. This accommodation crisis, the fact that we have so much demand and so little supply, it makes quality terrible and it makes prices astronomical. So if you don't have new accommodation, I don't think you're going to have a structural change. But if this student-run letting agency also encourages better practice, and if it's feasible, certainly I'll pursue it.
So obviously a lot's been made of you and Dave living together.
Yeah.
I asked him this morning if there was any
system where the other one, but the one that loses buys the other one a pint?
We haven't.
Have you got any plans?
No, we haven't spoken about it yet. But I think we spoke actually briefly the other day, thinking about throwing a party of sorts at our house, like win or lose, we all like to booze, or something to the effect. He is my best mate, and I care about him dearly. And it's unfortunate we're running against each other, but it's fine. Our other flatmates have been great, and we have no campaigning rules in the house, and it's worked out just fine. And to be fair, now that we're finally here, now that campaign week is finally on, it's much easier. We just let it run, we see where we are, and we'll be fine. So,
Pat Matthewson, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Take care.